give the committee a chance to chat quickly on a couple of bills, ones we were talking about this morning, also the baby food bill. And then if we've got a few minutes, we're going to have Richard give us some background on a little piece of language that we might add to the miscellaneous bill. So that's what we're going to try and pack into the next half hour. If we can get it. All right, thank you, Jen. So why don't we, well, because it's still somewhat fresh in our memories, go back to the rodenticide draft that we looked at earlier with Bradley. And we had a chance to ask some questions. Did you see anything there that you raised a red flag other than what you've already heard?
Yeah. John. No, I should have got enough life.
So 758, the rodenticide bill, any comments? Hearing none?
No.
Be happy to take a motion to,
Yeah, I'm not,
Richard, you had, I know you raised some concerns that not all farmers are licensed
yeah,
applicators, so they don't all have the advantage that you have. They would have to either become a licensed applicator themselves, which doesn't sound like it's an insurmountable burden, but would take some time and some training and some expense.
I mean, is there a way for us to find that out? Like what percentage? I mean, is that something the Agency of Agriculture might know? Like how many, I mean, because like when I think about people that I've talked to who have apple orchards, all of them are licensed applicators. So are there going to be other,
and it's not just farmers, sugar makers. They're producing food. They have to keep rodents under control. Everybody in the food business, now, a lot of people use, certified, licensed applicators, the big ones. I'm sure Red Hen does. I shouldn't say I'm sure, I don't know what they do. But Cabot does and Ben and Jerry's and whatnot. My whole thing is, what problem are we trying to solve with this? Our wildlife populations are strong. Our raptors population is strong. We just started the use of bait boxes 2 years ago on the second generation. There's been no studies to catch up to where we've been, and and Fish and Wildlife and the Agency of Agriculture are working together now to make new rules, and I don't know why we want to be so fast to circumvent something that they're working on to make better. So that's my whole thing, and again, I'm not all about getting warm and fuzzy with rats and mice. I think that, I had an issue at my home 1 year out of the 30 years I've lived there. And I don't have a whole lot of evidence of a problem this year, but I had one issue. But I can't speak for other people in urban areas or, other people in other places. So I just don't know what problem we're trying to solve. And taking away, useful tools for people that do have a problem.
I was gonna say we can go around the room, but we will go. Go ahead, Representative Brethel.
Well, I think the problem we're trying to solve is while wildlife populations might be strong, they are affected. And we saw some pretty strong testimony, and there's some pretty horrible deaths that looked like some of the owls. And we have testimony about poisoning of humans, mostly children. So that's the problem I think we're trying to solve. And I think what we're trying to do, I believe, is to create better education, make sure that the stuff isn't applied indiscriminately. That's one issue you run into anytime you're dealing with a type of pesticide is a little bit is good, more has got to be better. That's not always the case. And I'm no expert in what it takes. I mean, I don't really even understand what it takes to become an applicator, but what I've heard is that the fee is pretty small, like somewhere around $25, and that you have to have some kind of training. So if you're a farmer and you don't have what you need and you've got a rodent problem, it shouldn't be that onerous. And then you, as that farmer, have had some training on the proper application and limiting the use, doing it correctly rather than just, go out and buy it. And I think that could be a good thing. If you really have a problem, this isn't an unattainable goal to get certified to use the stuff.
Representative Brigham.
Yeah, well, unless you got something better. And I got a small farm, we don't use much, but we got 100 or so chickens when they start to get, we got cats too, but when they start to get built up, we'll use it in bait, my own bait stations that can't be entered by the cats or the other animals on the farm, but I think we're putting in jeopardy a lot of our small businesses in our food industries by not having an alternative that actually works. So I'm really not in favor of banning it 100%, and I don't have a license either to use it. That's my thoughts.
Representative Bustle.
Yeah, I mean, as I understand it, the language right now is not banning it 100%. It's banning it unless you have a certified applicator who's going to put it in. And like, as John was saying, like you can get the training. If you have a persistent problem, you can get the training and do that. But I mean, my feelings are pretty much what John was saying, that the reason we're doing this is because there still is an impact on wildlife. And in terms of pain and suffering on animals that are living in our woods, trying to prevent them eating poison rodents, and then bleeding out from a horrible death, that feels like something that is sort of within our purview to do. Forestry is one of our categories on this committee, and animals that live in the forest are part of what we're supposed to be thinking about, and trying to find a balance between what are the needs of the humans we represent and what are the needs of the animals that live in the forest is part of what we have to do. And I feel like the bill in the form we have it right now is a pretty good compromise. It's not ruling them out 100%. But it is restricting them, so there will be less exposure for the animals who are impacted negatively. So I would support it in the current form.
Others.
Question.
Yeah.
We heard some testimony this morning about an automobile that the wiring got. Can you still take a block of cat or something and putting it in the cab of your tractor or your getter in the hopes of saving your wiring or your computer lines? If this bill passes, or are those first or second generation?
Yeah.
So that's, I don't know what, I'm not sure that brand, where it falls, what category, but if it's first generation or second generation or non-anticoagulant.
So no Ace Hardware or anyone would be able to sell those?
Would not be,
Small.
would not, you would have to get a licensed person, you could become licensed.
Let's say all 200,000 vehicle owners in the state would need a license. They're not to put some of that in their trunk.
Or they would need to hire somebody with a
On their
license.
vehicle.
Is there any way, we were just talking, is there any way we can nudge the industry towards building a better mousetrap? I mean, the problem exists here because the rodents eat the poison and then run outside and they're available to wildlife. So if there was a way to contain them in better bait traps,
Yeah.
this wouldn't be an issue. And I don't know what we could do here to push the industry towards, a bait trap that contains the poison animals.
I mean, I suppose a ban would maybe encourage that industry to look at what it could do, sort of build a better mousetrap. Yeah, okay.
Maybe
Chair, can you hear me?
We can, yes, go ahead, Greg.
I just want to, just a clarifying question. Is there still an exemption that in case the secretary decides there's an emergency situation?
Yes.
Do we have that in this bill still?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not looking at it in front of me, but there would be a ban on using them in or near environmentally sensitive areas. But the secretary could, if there were an emergency, overrule that. I think that's what we've got. Yeah.
Is there any kind of duration? I don't know if it's, this is a little bit new to me, but can you have an exemption that lasts for years, or what's the typical duration of a emergency use?
Yeah. I don't think that the bill as currently drafted specifies the duration. And in the absence of anything explicit, I think it would be entirely up to the secretary.
Would it be wise? I think this has been floated, and I feel like perhaps California has this in their statute that there's a sunset on their language. Is that something we want to entertain in terms of if it might not, if things get out of control, we don't necessarily want this to be an act of legislation that has to take place to undo something. I mean, obviously that emergency situation, the emergency declaration by the secretary could continue. I don't know if we want to do like a 3-year time period like we've have for a lot of other statute where we want to wait and see, but we don't want it to necessarily require an act of legislation to go back to what we had. Just a thought.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Representative Bartholomew?
Just looking at that section of the bill, and it's really just a ban within 500 feet of any environmentally sensitive area. And then there are the lesses where the exception could be made, and there's no mention of time. So the secretary could, I guess, it's Fish and Wildlife that would make that. Is that right?
No, I think it's ag.
Fish and Wildlife is mentioned here, but
What page?
there isn't. This is on page 6.
The exemption permit comes from ag, right?
So it's only related the regular ban is only within 500 feet. That's the word I'm looking for, of an environmentally sensitive area. It's not just everywhere. So that's the only place there's an actual ban, and there's an exception there that's related to the agency.
The agency
And there's
can,
no time.
and there's no time limit, okay.
So I think that's covered in here already. And again, it's only within as we defined an environmentally sensitive area within 500 feet.
Representative Goslin?
Can I just clarify something? So I think, John, that as I understand it, the prohibition within 500 feet is one part of it. And then the other restriction is it's going to transition from, there are now circumstances where people can use all different levels of rodenticides. And we're making it so that if you're using a rodenticide, it has to be with a certified applicator. So that is a transition where homeowners, business owners, whatever, that may be a change. And the hope is that will be maybe a pare back of what we've had before in terms of usage. So I think it's still both those categories are going to be restricted. Am I correct about that?
Well, yeah,
It's not just the 500 feet, it's also the change in access.
that's true, yeah. Representative Burt may have had a hand up. Okay, we'll move to Representative Nelson.
If you can trust Google. I looked up what California has done. And, what rodenticides can you use now? And the toxic bait options now available for residents use are the non-ARs. The bromethylene, polycalciferol, and zinc phosphate. That they can't use any of the anti-coagulants, first or second generation without license.
Representative Lipsky.
Yeah, I raised concerns about the public health. Thus asked if we could get the Department of Health in here, we can. And I understand that if you're a food hub or restaurant or grocer, you will likely have a commercial firm that's managing your facility. But where do individual people, whether they live alone or they have a family, are we part of the public? I'm assuming we are. We're diminutive little groupings of them.
So as individual.
Yeah,
individual.
so we are one of the most rural states in the country. We do have the oldest housing stock, and we are in a very cold climate. All things working against us protecting our homes, kitchens, and families. So, I have, and I set traps, a couple of dozen a year. I replace them because the springs sprang. They become dysfunctional, like probably every other household. But as far as putting them in a tractor, a skidder, a harvester, a forder, vibration and the ankles are on, snap traps don't work in those. All of them have complex wiring, just like all of our vehicles. And, maybe they're these zinc blocks or whatever California allows. I just think the invisible men and women of our state, rural people, need something other than a snap trap if they aren't going to hire a commercial applicator or operator to come to all of our homes. And they are, you only had one problem in 20 years, every year within a 1850 house. And, we would get overrun. So I'm concerned that we don't leave the average citizen without at least something in the toolbox other than the snap traps. Not for their vehicles where they do go to the work or wherever. But I have a concern about that, and I'd appreciate you giving me a little comfort. But I don't have the answers, but one thing I know from that 30 minutes of testimony this morning, relying on birth control, if that isn't working yet. It's like, you know,
It's not the solar bill.
it's not the solution.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Right. Yeah, well, we certainly seem to have got some conflicting testimony on that, because another group said it does work, so I don't know what to believe. And what I'm finding alarming is that the companies can put whatever they want out in the market, whether they work or not, like the Sonic things, like
Right.
why are you allowed to sell something and advertise it that it will control mice if it doesn't? That's troubling to me, but I wanted to touch on the wiring. Does anybody know, I keep hearing about the soy-based wiring and that attracts mice because it's edible and they're eating the insulation. But are car manufacturers still using that? And if you have just regular plastic insulation, do the mice get after that? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, certainly the soy base was a problem. And even with that, I'm guessing most Vermonters don't put some type of a bait in their cars prophylactically. Maybe they do, but
I mean, I had a mouse build a nest in my car once. And not inside the car, but in the engine. And I don't know where it went, but like when I was getting some kind of upkeep and they found that there had been a mouse thing in there. But all the other years of my life, I've never had that. And I've parked in the same garage for the last 12 years. So like once there was a mouse and then a bunch of other times there weren't.
did it eat wiring? And
It actually chewed on some stuff, but it didn't actually damage anything mechanically in the car.
I just don't know whether the wiring that isn't soy-based.
Yeah,
be
I mean, this was about
attracted to mice.
5 years ago. Yeah.
I had a 3-year-old Tiguan that was in, now this may, besmirch my, sanitary practice, but in the glove box, go to open it and there's napkins, they're all torn up, your registration. Numerous times the engine compartment. I mean, this wasn't some drop in, some of us don't have a garage that can close the door once.
Mine's actually a carport. It's not a garage either. Yeah.
Anyway,
There's
My
lots of
vehicle
access for
always-
rodents to come to my house to my car if they want to, but
One of the,
I also have cats, which is a good old fashioned method. I have cats. I live in the country and I don't have any problems with mice.
so just, I want to maybe try and wrap this up for the moment. And I think Representative Nelson Richard, you asked a good question about what problem are we should always be asking that question, right? What problem are we addressing, trying to solve? And, I think, yes, we certainly have seen lots over the course of this session, last session, lots of evidence that there is an impact. How you measure that impact? At what point do you decide something needs to be done? Those may be personal questions. And there's also a human impact. We haven't really talked about that as much or heard as much about that, but we know that that's also a thing to be considered. And then I guess the question is, if you feel there is a problem that needs to be addressed, what might the solution be? If this isn't the solution, maybe folks can think about, what do you think would be the solution? So we're going to leave it at that for now. I did want to just, while we have, here, would you mind coming up to the table and just spend 3 minutes even just talking about the work that you and Representative Nelson and others have done? And then we'll see some language later. So our miscellaneous bill.
Nothing to do with rodents.
Nothing to do with rodenticides, yeah.
I need a little bit.
We have a miscellaneous bill that has one section in that we heard about yesterday. It's the solid, non-sewage solid waste that the agency asked us to change some of the language on. There's a section on pricing, unit pricing. We're going to take testimony this afternoon on. There's another section on training. and that's it, just those three things. We haven't really talked very much about any of it. There's some language that's come out of the work that the CAFO study group has done that Richard has been a big part of. We want to make sure that that language gets into a bill somewhere before crossover. Jared, you got 3 minutes.
Thank you. So for the record, Jared Carpenter, Lake Champlain Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so we've been involved in, if folks remember the CAFO bill from last year of switching large dairy and medium dairy that qualifies over to a CAFO program and out of the large farm permitting and medium farm permitting. As part of that bill, there was a stakeholder group was put together consisting of farmers, the petitioners, the environmental advocates, so Lake Champlain Committee, Conservation Law Foundation, Ron Natural Resources Council, to get together and work on implementation and the timeline about how that would all happen. Our last meeting was last Friday morning. And in the process right now, the consultant that was hired by A&R to moderate and do all the discussions is putting together a final report. One of the things that came out of that, let me just say, they're very productive conversations. We worked through a lot of the issues. There's a lot of give and take on both sides. And I think Representative Nelson, that we addressed the concerns. But one of the things that will be going as part of this was an interest on part of all the parties. Well, I don't know about the agencies. We don't talk about the advocates and farmers to continue this stakeholder group going forward. So as the process unfolds and as the timeline of when the permit comes out and who needs to get it and the dual inspections and all of that, this group can get together and talk it through and make course corrections if needed. So we've been working on language that would essentially extend what was in the bill last year in terms of what farmers would participate, some technical service providers, some folks from the advocates, someone from the conservation districts. We would meet quarterly. A&R would administer it, i.e. reserve the room and set up the Zoom link and things of that nature. The agencies had a seat at the table initially. They can certainly be at the room, but it was discussed, well, wait a second, this is a group to get together to essentially critique the agencies. So it makes more sense for them to be more on the sidelines than in the middle. And so that is essentially one part of the language. The other part of the language is there was an interest. We had heard in the discussions that the inspections from AFM and A&R can sometimes be inconsistent, where people are there's different standards, there's wondering who's doing the training, et cetera. So there was an interest in hiring a third-party auditor to come in for a 2-year time period to do an audit of the training program, put together a training program so A&R and AFM are on the same page, so to speak, under the same training program, getting all of the same services, and that if they wanted, the farmers that needed to get the permits could participate in the training free of cost. So they would know exactly what is being looked for when their farms are being inspected by these two. And so that will hopefully bring some consistency to the inspections, which Richard can testify more than I can. Sometimes they're a little inconsistent, is my understanding. So I'll take a deep breath.
Yeah, I was, the above is everything that we had discussed. And with the modification that the agencies are invited to be there, but not necessarily participants. Hopefully they're to ask questions.
Yes,
And take notes.
definitely should be included, but not necessarily I don't know if we'll vote on anything, but not a voting member. So
Yeah. And then on a third-party CAFO inspector auditor, that was the new part you told me was coming, and and we discussed it at length, and are you looking to make that statute by putting that here?
Be session law. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm waiting to hear back from DEC, and I'll ping them again on this. I'm not 100% sure whether they have the authority to go out and hire somebody, so this would give them the authority to do so. If they already have the authority, then you don't need that language. But I wanted to I think we should make sure that we don't have any hiccups going forward, so everything can proceed smoothly.
You go ahead, yeah, John.
Does appropriations have to weigh in
Yeah, that
to
was
keep
my
the study group going forward?
I'm sorry?
Does appropriations have to support the study group going forward?
I think, yes, from a per diem, there'll be a per diem. So I think just from the per diem standpoint, which is a good reminder for me to talk to Representative Squirrel and Stevens. Thank you.
So if I was gonna ask the same thing, if there is an appropriation in the bill, then we will have to go to that committee.
Right.
And that could hang things up just because they've got I don't want to catch them off guard. So if you haven't talked to,
I haven't, and it's not requesting for any additional money other than your standard quote unquote per diem.
yeah,
Which is usually,
that,
It's de minimis.
yeah. Even that is enough to, unfortunately, require the bill go.
we could have an extra stop. I will talk to both of them in the next, hopefully over lunchtime.
This stakeholder group is important enough to the livestock people, the farmers, that I heard mentioned, they're not doing this for their retirement benefits.
Hmm.
They're doing this because they feel it's that important to leave the farm to do it.
Yeah.
And so,
We think the continued dialogue is very important going forward. The interesting irony is that with the first meeting that we had, the advocates and the farmers, was there was an insistence that both agencies were kicked out of the room so we could have a discussion amongst ourselves. And the conversations were very productive when the agencies weren't in the room, as far as I can tell. So
Well, it's always encouraging to hear when advocates and interest holders who don't always align on issues are able to come together. So it sounds encouraging. If you have language that you could send to our ledge council.
I've sent it to both of you
Okay.
early this morning if you want to.
Forward it on to Bradley.
yeah, okay.
And just CC me and we'll take a shot at getting that in.
That'd be great. And I apologize for the late hour, but all this is coming together.
I thought it would go in the Senate bill and they are also working late.
That has miles to go before it sleeps, so to speak. So I'm not sure what'll be the status of that.
Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you for the time, Mr. Chair.
We had scheduled some committee discussion this morning that we'll have to push back till later today on the baby food bill. So please cast your minds back to the testimony we had recently on that. And we won't vote on that today, but I will see if we can get a straw poll, just see where people are. We are also going to hear testimony this afternoon on, but basically, and I'm sorry, we're not going to hear testimony. We're going to have discussion on all the other bills. We want to try and get as good a place as we can before we go on the House floor today, knowing how people feel. And then we'll plan to vote things out tomorrow.
Voted nothing today.
I don't think so, although if we find that we are in a good position, we could do that. Yeah, I don't want to completely count that out, but also am prepared to wait until tomorrow. Just one note too, tomorrow we're going to start at 9:15. We're on the floor at 9:30, but we're going to be here at 9:15. That's the one chance that Ledge Council can come in on the baby food bill, just to, for 15 minutes. So
I feel we're really close on 7:39. I almost, as long as Greg could be available to use one of his voice phone friend votes.
Yeah.
I think we could figure out a year. And if we put in there that if suitable. Anyway, let Greg talk.
Okay. All right. Well, let's take a break. Please be back at 1:00. And we're going to, at 1:00, we've got the agency here.